Hola, clase, bienvenidos a la clase de hoy. Hoy vamos a visitar la Universidad de Salamanca en España y vamos a hablar de los verbos regulares de AR. Today we'll visit the University of Salamanca, we'll get to know more about that, and we'll talk about regular verbs that end in AR. Clara es una estudiante de la Universidad de Salamanca. Esto es el campus de la Universidad de Salamanca. Y eso es el sello. This is an emblem. ¿Sí? De la Universidad de Salamanca. Ella estudia inglés. If you remember last time we talked about the meaning carrera, carrera being major, right? Su carrera es el inglés. So you would say she studies English or her major is English. Este semestre, ella toma 6 clases. Tomar, to take. This semester she takes 6 classes. Salamanca es una ciudad antigua. Fue fundada 3 siglos antes de Cristo. Hay una catedral del siglo XII y una universidad fundada en 1218. Take a second and look at the sentences and think what they might mean. You can stop the recording for this. Salamanca es una ciudad antigua. Salamanca is an old city. La ciudad, the city. Fue fundada 3 siglos antes de Cristo. It was founded 3 centuries, siglos y centuries, antes de Cristo, before Christ. Hay una catedral del siglo XII. If you integrate what you know here, you can translate this. There's a cathedral from the 12th century y una universidad fundada en 1218. And a university founded in 1218. Y eso es una foto de la universidad y de la catedral. Esa es una plaza en Salamanca. This is the main square in Salamanca. And that is a space right around the humanities departments. Es la Universidad de Salamanca. Es bonita, ¿no? Want to know more about this university? Stop the video, go to page 45 to learn more about this old university. FYI, if you're interested in this would make a great cultural assignment. But back to our task. We have used many different verbs until now. Did you ever stop to notice the endings? ¿Cómo te llamas? Or me llamo. Clara estudia inglés. Ella toma 5 clases. In order to talk about activities, you need to use verbs, just like in English. The infinitive is the base form of the verb. In English, the infinitive is preceded by the word to study, to be, to talk, to walk, to run, right? The infinitive in Spanish is a one-word form, and it can be recognized by its endings, AR, ER, and IR. Estudiar, comer, escribir. Today, we will just look at the first group. So how do you go about conjugating a verb? In other words, putting it in different forms. For instance, I study, you study, we study. You have particular endings for each person. Yo estudio, tú estudias, él, ella estudia. These are the so-called singular forms. Yo, tú, él, ella, and also usted. These three have the same form. Note this ends in O, in as, and in a. The plural forms, we, you, or you all, and you formally, or they, are nosotros, vosotros, and ellas, right? We've seen this with the verb ser. So how does estudiar conjugate here? Estudiamos, estudiáis, estudian. Amos, ais, and are the endings. They're attached to any verb that we'll run into today that ends in AR. So take a minute if you need to and look at this closely. Here are a few examples. Juan Carlos estudia ciencias ambientales. Juan Carlos studies environmental sciences. ¿Y tú qué estudias, Miguel? And you, what do you study? ¿Qué estudias, Miguel? So how do you go about conjugating? Well, the first thing is you drop the ending, AR today, AR in this case, or the other ones once we get to those. Then you add the stem. Then you add to the stem the endings we just talked about. Okay, that correspond to different subject pronouns. So if you look, for example, at the verb estudiar, estudi is the stem, you just left off AR, and you add an O for yo estudio. Bailar means to dance. You take off the AR ending, you have bail, and you add an ending, for instance, as for tú bailas, you dance. Trabajar, to work, has a stem of trabaj, and here you add, for instance, amos. Nosotros trabajamos. We work. Here are the most common AR verbs. You can find this also in the V-text or in your book, whichever you use. I suggest you look them over carefully. I can pronounce a few for you, and you can repeat. Bailar, buscar, caminar, cantar, cenar, comprar, contestar, conversar, desayunar, descansar, desear, dibujar, enseñar, escuchar, esperar. Take a little break. Desear and esperar, you see over here parentheses, means they're followed by an infinitive. I desire to do something. I desire to take a break, for instance, right? You would have an infinitive at the end. That's what that means. Estudiar, explicar, hablar, llegar, llevar, mirar, necesitar, practicar, preguntar, preparar, regresar, terminar, tomar, trabajar, viajar. Muy bien. If you like, pause and review on your own. Okay, so what is this guy doing? Bailar, caminar, o hablar? If you said caminar, you are spot on. This person is walking. ¿Y ellos? Hablar. Muy bien. ¿Y ellos? Bailar. Muy bien. ¿Qué hace ella? Descansar, preguntar o trabajar. Muy bien. Descansar. Now, look at these two and decide which one is which. What are they doing? If you said preguntar, you're right. What about him? Trabajar. Very good. Okay, so if you like, you can do this on your own, or maybe you have a roommate who knows a little Spanish. Hey, that would be great. You can pick out a few verbs of the list we just had and try and act them out. Obviously, it's more fun if you have more people. So try that. Maybe you can get one of your family members to play with you. Okay? Okay, so let's look at how AR verbs, or the present tense of AR verbs, can be used and how it compares to English. English uses 3 sets of forms to talk about the present. First of all, the simple present, Paco works, the present progressive, Paco is working, and 3, the emphatic present, Paco does work. In Spanish, the simple present can be used in all 3 of these cases, which means it can imply different things. Paco trabaja en la cafetería can be Paco works in the cafeteria. It can be Paco is working in the cafeteria, and Paco does work. Okay. In Spanish and English, the present tense is also sometimes used to express future action. For instance, Marina viaja a Madrid mañana. Mañana, tomorrow, exactly. So here you're pointing to the future, although you're using a present tense. These 3 English sentences are an equivalent of the Spanish Marina viaja a Madrid mañana. A slight note and something I mentioned earlier, remember when there was a parenthesis of plus infinitive? Let's look at this. When 2 verbs are used together with no change of subject, the second verb is always in the infinitive. And by the way, it also is in English. Okay? So if you want to say, deseo hablar con el señor Díaz, I want to speak with Mr. Diaz, you're doing the same thing. You're conjugating I want, and then you have an infinitive here. Deseo hablar. Okay? Now, what if you don't want to do something? You put the no in front of the conjugated verb, like you always do. Alicia no desea bailar ahora. She doesn't want to dance. Note that the no is in front of desea, which is conjugated, and then you have an infinitive here. Same structure, just with a negative. We've talked about this before, but just as a reminder, Spanish speakers often omit subject pronouns because the verb endings indicate who the subject is. They're pretty individual, right? The pronouns themselves are often used for emphasis, clarification, or contrast. So, que enseñan, what do they teach? Note there's no ellos. And you would say, ella enseña arte y él enseña física. Here you have a contrast. You're emphasizing the contrast, or you're clarifying maybe. ¿Quién desea trabajar hoy? Who wants to work today? Yo no deseo trabajar hoy. Emphasis. I don't want to work today. Think about this. Correcto o falso? Stop the recording and I'll give you the results. And there you have it.